Hi, everybody. I'm Rick DiClemente. Please put up with me tonight because I got a bit of a frog in my throat. I'm going to try to rough it through anyhow. Nice to have you join us tonight, whether you're live or coming across later through YouTube. I don't know what got into me this week, but I was told or led to do my chart. In all the years, I never did it. Most astrologers never do it. I'm going to do the whole thing, explain it to you. But I wanted to explain a few things to you first. Jupiter has entered Pisces today. Wonderful combination. Wonderful. For good spirit, good benevolence across the planet. It entered about an hour ago. It's not going to change the whole world, but it's a nice temporary fix. The chart of Israel is a mess. They have a really nasty chart, a very egomaniacal, ego-centered chart, and it's being blasted right now. They have a T-square to Pluto in their chart. They got 5 planets in Leo, and Uranus is hitting that Pluto. Now, to talk about what could happen when Uranus hits Pluto, you see one thing right now, a sudden explosion. It's up to them how they use it, and they've got a great history of abusing their energy. So that's all I'm going to say. Keep an eye on Israel. It's really not good. About 1971, a woman handed me a piece of paper with my chart on it, and she claimed to be an astrologer. She really didn't know what she was saying, but I didn't know. And she gave me the curse because I had a grand cross in my chart, and she told me I was not very creative and I'd have nothing but hardship and blah, blah, blah. But anyhow, I kept my eye on that chart. And during those years, 71 to 78, I just kept asking people their sun signs. And I started to study sun signs. And then somehow in 78, I was in a bookstore, an astrology bookstore. I can't remember where and I can't remember when. And out of nowhere, I don't even know if the book jumped off the shelf into my hands or whether I picked it up. It was that startling. It said, "This is what you're supposed to do." That vivid, that clear, never happened again on anything. And it was right, and I haven't stopped since. So in 78, I studied intensely till I became professional in 81. And in 81, 3 years into it, I started charging $25 per reading and started doing readings for people. But more importantly, I started to see the truth or falsehood of what this woman had made me live with since 71. So to answer your questions, Erica, and everybody else, if you're going to read for somebody, be very careful how you do it. I'm not telling you not to read, but be honest with them. Say, if you don't know, say, I don't know. But be very careful not to give them a curse, which is what she did to me. Anyhow, 78 is when I started. Here comes the amazing story of my chart. All right. I'll tell you how this chart came about. There it is. Okay. On the morning of January 1st, my mom and dad had just come back from a New Year's party. And they got in late, of course, and they got up early in the morning. My dad had the bags packed. I'll get to the chart much more in a second. He had the bags packed for the hospital, and my mom didn't think it was really that time. And all of a sudden, about 8 o'clock in the morning, she had to go. This was it. And my dad panicked, of course, and started to get the suitcase into the car and get her into the car. And what happened was my next door neighbor showed up at 10 minutes after 8 o'clock, and he drove an emergency car for a hospital. And he said, Get in the car with me. We don't have time for you to get back. Just jump in. And I jumped in and I was born in the back seat of his car. 10 minutes after 8 in the morning. So that took me years to unwind my super unclear Gemini mother. It took me years to figure out what the exact birth time was. And it ended up being that the birth time on the birth certificate was accurate. So that's when I was born, at 10 minutes after 8 in the morning in Wheeling, West Virginia. So in that town at that time, if you were first in the city, you got a present from every store in town. 350 stores. You got a present from every store in town if you were born first of the year. And I was born second. And you can go today and still see the microfiche. I got my picture in the paper, but I was second. So that's the way it's gone since then. Anyhow, here's the chart. Okay, now I was handed this chart in 1971 that was done by hand. And of course, I didn't know what to look at. And I pick it up every now and then and look at it. I got it mostly stored in my mind. But the thing that's obviously very powerful about the chart and noticeable is right across the ascendant is the sun opposite Uranus. Now you look real closely. The sun is 10, ascendant's 15, Uranus at 12. So it's very strong going across there. And this is what gives me the astrological fever. And we notice also the Chiron is at 5. And Chiron opposite Uranus is the symbol of somebody with astrological ability that I think. It's certainly not a very Capricornian thing to study astrology, but when you have a very strong Uranus, it does. Now, I don't know what's happening lately, and I've been studying and studying, but I seem to keep finding that the law of bucket patterns, the law of a bucket pattern is one planet's by itself, all the other planets are out here. Well, this isn't a true bucket because you got this big gap, and don't we have two planets here? So I keep studying this, and I keep finding that when a planet's around that area, it acts very much like a bucket pattern. In other words, there's a lot of Aquarius energy in the chart. So we see Capricorn's very strong, Uranus is very strong, going right across the ascendant. The sun had just risen. So you probably couldn't see any of the planets. Possibly you could have seen Venus in the middle of the daytime, the Venus in Scorpio. The eyes are drawn directly towards the triplicate, the Mars, Neptune, Saturn trio there. 7 degrees apart, and Mars, Neptune within 1 degree of each other. A lot of Pisces in the chart. The moon is in Pisces. The moon is sesquiquadrate, which is 125 degrees exactly. The moon is exactly sesquiquadrate to the Mars Neptune. The thing that stands out to me in the chart is that the Mars Neptune is at the midpoint between the Pluto Mercury trine. The Pluto Mercury trine. Okay, so when you look at something like this, it's pretty overwhelming at first. So when I was given the chart, I was like, what? What's this mean? And she went off on the Grand Cross, and the Grand Cross is very important. And to look again, you see how the Grand Cross is kind of wide. 10 degrees the sun, 5 degrees Chiron, Uranus at 12, Saturn's at 14, Eris is at 6. Eris is the same degree as Jupiter. Jupiter, Eris, same degree in Aries. This is very, very strong. This is one reason I'm such a big follower and believer in Eris. And you notice how slowly Eris moves. It had only entered Aries in 1921. 30 years later, it had only gone 6 degrees. Okay, so here's the cross. And crosses are very weird things. They're very hard to predict. They are symbolic of a lot of stress in the chart. So it's been true to a lot of degrees, yes. A lot of times you'll see people with grand crosses they're also called grand squares. You'll see a lot of people who are very, very successful with a grand cross. And the reason is there's so much pressure in the chart that you have to work your butt off just to get through a day. And by working your butt off all the time, you end up being very talented. So the chart is really a mixture of a lot of stress and a lot of talent, I think. I'll be showing you the 12th harmonic, etc., etc. But let's start off with the personal planets. And Linda can sit there with her eyes as big as 50-cent pieces. Sun in Capricorn, Capricorn rising. This makes me a double Capricorn. And you may as well call me a quadruple Capricorn because Saturn is almost exactly square to the ascendant and the sun. So Saturn is very, very strong in my chart. Saturn 14, Sun 10, Ascendant 15. Now, I don't know why, and Erica was right last week calling me father, jokingly. And what I'm talking about is when I was 1969, I went to a college day where one senior out of every high school in West Virginia was invited to go to study about this new thing called computers. And we studied these new things with holograph cards and how computers worked. But one thing that happened that was funny, you're like this, John Hayes. While we were all sitting around having our drinks, just drinking probably Kool-Aid or Coke, being 17 years old in the dormitories, we ended up creating a student court. And we ended up charging you with an offense and charging him with an offense, and ended up making me the judge. They put me on top of this desk, and I was on top of this desk with a gavel, and I was beating it, and I was giving out rulings. But the funny thing was there was something about that clicked in me. There was something about that clicked. As if a Capricorn is well placed in that position. I'm not sure, but take a look at this. It was really funny, but I could feel it happen when it did. Saturn is exalted in Libra. This is the best place for Saturn in Libra. Okay? Your personal planets. The moon is in Pisces. Mercury is in Sag. That's why I jump around so much. Venus is in Scorpio. And the Mars may as well not even be in Libra. It's not only the weakest place for Mars, but it's next to Neptune. So my Mars doesn't get to say very much because Neptune gets to be the boss when the two are conjuncted. Okay, when you have a chart like this and you study it neutrally through the years, what you end up finding out is what really matters in this chart is the Sun opposite Uranus, Mars next to Neptune exactly, Saturn square the ascendant. Those are the stories, just like I did for you last week. And I told you what signs stick out for you. That's what sticks out in my chart. Okay. Now, Sun opposite Uranus. Not only is the Sun opposite Uranus, and it's 2 degrees off, and Mars is sitting on Uranus exactly tonight, but it's on the ascendant. Okay. When the Sun is opposite Uranus, it's a very complex story. The Sun wants to express itself. The Sun doesn't know it's in Capricorn, but the Sun is in Capricorn. The Sun wants to express itself. Being in Capricorn, you know what that means. The Sun wants to express itself in rather conventional ways. And I'm certainly not very conventional. And that's because the opposition to Uranus. Okay, Now, what happens when the sun is opposite Uranus, or any planet is opposite Uranus, or any planet square to Uranus, is you get this herky-jerky, unpredictable surge and pull back, surge and pull back, surge and pull back. You just don't know what's going to happen next. I do about zero preparation for this course, for this class. I just don't prepare. And when I do prepare, I can't stand it. I can't stand having a bunch of notes that I have to follow. What's it say? I just don't work that way. I work off the cuff, and that's Sun Uranus. So we all get the benefit of it. We all get the suffering of it, which means you don't know what the hell's going to happen till it happens. Right, John? Right. Anyhow, I'm very... when you get older doing astrology, you get to the point where I think you pretty much would agree with me that none of us would really change anything in our own chart. Our chart just has to be the way it is. Okay, John's giving me some kind of hand signal. I'm not sure what it means. Anyhow, it's a thumbs up. So with Sun opposite Uranus, what's so interesting about it, remember I told you last week that traditional Aquarius has two rulers. It's ruled by Saturn and it's ruled by Uranus. Well, that's very much my case. And I'm living with a woman who is Aquarian with a T-square to Saturn. So we got, sometimes she's a Saturn, sometimes I'm the Aquarius, sometimes we flip back and forth, sometimes within one sentence. So it's kind of crazy. So when you think about it, don't go by the rules. Think about what Saturn's trying to do and why it's trying to do that. And what is Uranus trying to do? When Saturn walks into a room, this is how you teach beginners. When Saturn walks into the room, what do you think Saturn's going to look at? What do you think Saturn's going to say? And by saying Saturn, I also imply Capricorn, since Saturn rules Capricorn. Saturn or Capricorn is looking for order, making sure that things work. By its own nature, it's rather conservative. It wants things to work out. It quiets things down. If they're kind of nutty, it quiets them down. Uranus, on the other hand, is opposite. Uranus wants to bring everything to life. Not that it's crazy. It can be, but it wants things to not be in the doldrums. Let's get out of the doldrums. You know that feeling where you're just stuck and nothing's happening and you just like, somebody make something happen around here. That's the Uranus. So that's why I constantly go back and forth, and there is no way I can change it. Sun, Uranus, Sun, Capricorn, Aquarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Capricorn, Aquarius. I go back and forth between the two. And in the midst of that target shooting, some brilliant things come in astrologically. Sometimes they're not, sometimes they are. That's just how Uranus works. It's kind of a crazy, flipped out, neurotic, brilliant, genius energy. So I've had to learn to live with it. Then you put Saturn at the top of the chart, squaring the ascendant and squaring the Sun and Uranus. So I don't know what the hell I did in a past lifetime, but you've got a real thing going on here. To me, the real issue in the chart is Saturn is squaring the Sun and Uranus and is squaring the ascendant all at the same time. Coming out of the ninth house. When Saturn comes out of the ninth house is the house of philosophy. So it's very much like Saturn in Sagittarius. It's a Saturn that's about rules. And here's Erica rightfully barking at me for my rules last week. She was exactly right. But what do I stand for? What do I talk about all the time? There aren't any rules. Let's break all the rules. There aren't any rules. Here comes Waldo. Speaking of having no rules, here comes Waldo. Welcome to our little party, Mr. Waldo. Okay. So it's become clear to me after many years of researching different fields, what I have felt and what I have researched and what I have found is I am here to be some kind of leader of philosophy, leader almost like a church reverend, but I don't want to be involved in the church, but some kind of spiritual thought. Now take a look at this. Leader of spiritual thought. When you have a stellium in the middle of the ninth house, you have somebody that's going to be able to teach at a higher level, maybe delayed because of Saturn. But this is professor ability, is what this is. Now you're going to see there's a lot to these charts when you just keep studying and studying and studying. We'll get to the piece at a time. Okay. In the midst of this, you got a very sensitive moon in Pisces. We have not talked about the North Node much. It's in Pisces. The part of fortune we've not talked about. It's in Pisces. Ceres, the strongest asteroid there is in Pisces. They're all together. They're all together in this little area here. But when you have a Capricorn, the main three things, a Capricorn with Capricorn rising and a moon in Pisces, what you have is somebody who's basically pretty reverent. Reverent. And I'm basically very irreverent. And why would that be? Because Waldo just got here. No, because of the Uranus opposition and because of the Mercury in Sagittarius. So I'm reverent and irreverent at the same time. Well, I'm at the point now where I'm so old, I don't care anymore. Here's to you. I'm not worrying about it. Now, take it very interesting, and I've done this work myself, and I'm very proud of it, and I really think it's accurate, and I really think you're smart to follow along, called the 12th harmonic, and I really think it's the case. John's been following me for years, and I really think the 12th harmonic is the secret to astrology. Most people don't even know it's there. I did meet one woman once who used it the same as I did, and I about fell over. Look at my 12th harmonic. Okay, this is the chart of my past life, or you might say, this is my chart of my spiritual transcript. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 planets involved in opposition in the learning teaching quadrant. 3rd house, 9th house, all with a T-square to Venus in Pisces. Recently, Uranus went over that point in the past 15 years or so. The day Uranus went over that point, the day it went, because Uranus is the planet that hits exactly. The day it hit that point, I had to read for somebody with no astrology chart. In other words, it was the first day I tried a psychic reading. It was kind of interesting. So the 12th harmonic shows two really exceptionally questionable things here. Look at this. All right, you've got 7 planets leading to Venus and Pisces in the 6th house. This is a tremendous symbol of service to others. Does it mean I need to serve more? Does it mean I need to serve less? I don't know. And the way you learn from these things is you go back in time and you learn when a planet hits these spots. What happened? When a planet hit that spot, what happened? When a planet hit that spot, what happened? That's how you learn what these things mean. You don't try to theorize what it means. The other thing is this T-square to Saturn. And the signs do matter in harmonics. And this T-square is the Saturn in Virgo. And I don't like it. I don't like Saturn in Virgo anywhere. It's just too hard. It's too tough. Now, what am I doing? Try to answer to this? Remember, I've always told you the 12th harmonic is about Your feeling of inadequacy of getting to God, what do you think you need to perfect? What do you think you need to get done better? What is it through your history that now that you're looking back at your past lifetimes, you're about to take a new lifetime, 1952, you're sitting with your spiritual guides and you're deciding, I'm going to be born on a certain day, a certain time, because I need these certain energies and these certain tests. So what is it with the Saturn and Virgo? Is it that I had people all around me telling me very rigidly you had to follow God in XYZ fashion? I don't know. I do know the secret to astrology is staying loose. Right, Waldo? Damn right. Staying loose, which means don't get yourself glued in with a pen and a magic marker and try to guess exactly what it means right now. Keep it loose, keep it light till you play with it some. Then the other major, what's called a construct. 7 planets in the T-square to Venus. 7 planets. What's that saying? The way you learn is you watch the transits hit those parts. That's how you learn. So in my birth chart, for instance, I'm still using a pencil. This is the 12th harmonic. Let me go back to the birth chart. Okay. The way you learn, what happens when Saturn goes around and comes back here? What happens when Saturn goes over the sun? What happens when Uranus goes over the moon? What happens when Uranus squares Uranus? This is how you learn. So don't think that coming to this class every week is your answer, because it's not. This is going to help, but where you're going to learn is picking up your family chart, your pet's chart, your business's chart, your parents' chart, and go back and see where were the planets when they got married, where were the planets when he got sent off to Vietnam, etc. This is how you learn. Okay? So just some of the things. Watch this. Unbelievable, some of the things that I can recall. All right. In my ex-wife's chart, my chart's going to remind me of other things. So I'm going to jump around because that's how I teach. In my ex-wife's chart, the day that Saturn hit the bottom of her chart, recent months, both her parents died. 17 years of age, and as Saturn was approaching, this is the mother line. Saturn was approaching that line. Both her parents died when she was 17. When Saturn hit that line, she snapped out of it, says, well, I got to get out of this depression I'm in. I got to go off to college and get past this. So she started. 28 years later, to the day, 28 years later, Saturn hit that line. She asked me for a divorce. You live and you learn. Look at your charts when Saturn's going through the 7th house, especially when it's in this area near the cusp. Did you get married? Did you get divorced? Did you start dating somebody? What happened? Well, look at me. Look at my chart. I worked for 20 years for colleges running their software to keep one office running in sync with another. And you can ask my girl, because every night in my dreams, almost every night, I'm still installing software at these damn colleges, and I can't stop it. That's kind of crazy. Okay. So when you see something as powerful as Sun opposite Uranus, where old-time astrology would take you is the Sun is the ruler of Leo. So the Sun is the ruler of the 8th house. The Sun is the ruler of wherever Leo is. Leo's on the 8th house. Other people's money, shared interests, shared values. Opposite Uranus. Uranus rules Aquarius. So we got the Sun ruling the 8th house. I'm sorry. Yeah, the Sun rules the 8th house and Uranus rules the 2nd house. So in terms of second house, eighth house, my money, your money, our money together, you can see that in those cases, in all my lifetime, those issues just keep going up and down. Got it, then don't have it. Got it, then don't have it. Got it, then don't have it. It's just out of my control because of the Sun and Uranus rulership. One of the things I've noticed is very common in this chart, even though Uranus is in the sixth house, you have to watch this closely, it's 3 degrees away from the seventh house. So this Uranus, in my opinion, is a sixth house and a seventh house. Uranus, it's ruling, it's deposited in both. It's having great impact on both. Well, I've had some relationships in my lifetime with Uranian women, or women who were free spirits. They had Uranian flavor to them. That's definitely very true. But another thing that's real true about Uranus in the sixth house is people with Uranus in the sixth house, they don't like being bossed. They don't like having a boss. They're rebels. Uranus is the rebel planet. And I certainly have had difficulty with my different bosses in the past when they got too strict, etc., etc. Okay, here's Pluto in the seventh. Here's Uranus, really close to the seventh house cusp. And what I've been telling you for a year now is the seventh house has much more to do with your sense of counseling. How do you appear to people? How do you, I told John, showing up in his chart, his seventh house was changing. When planets cross this area, you start to change your public persona. So with Uranus and Pluto there, both, I can be a very intense counselor of sorts. That's what that says. The ninth house is very confusing. With Saturn and Mars and Neptune, you got 3 really conflicting planets here. And what this is really about, this is about, I think, me trying to take all of the spiritual and philosophical learning that I have acquired and trying to blend it into something that is measurable, trying to talk on layman's terms. So this is why I teach the way I do, because of these 3 planets. And it's not simple, because Mars, I don't care what you say, Mars wants to be Martian. And Mars can't be Martian when it's in Libra, and it sure can't be Martian when it's the same degree with Neptune. So it has a constant fight with Neptune, because Neptune say, did you do it for them? Did you do it to serve? Did you do it for everybody else? Or did you do it for yourself? So this is the constant fight that's going on. And if you read the book, these 3 are a very bad example of what can happen to the muscles in the body. These 3 symbols all through history are historic of crippling, of trouble with multiple sclerosis, which I've had 47 years, trouble with all kind of physical expressions. And these 3 acted up when they acted up. It all started when Pluto was going through here in 1974. Pluto had gone from here, and Pluto was going over these 3 planets that have to do with your mind-body combination. So it was a very tough time when Pluto went through those 3 planets there. When Pluto got to the top of the chart, I was made the head of the administrative computing at a college. So how do you run the software that ties the whole campus together so that the registrar talks to the billing office, etc.? So that's what I was trained in. And when a planet gets to the top of the chart, it's usually a symbol that you come into your power, you come into your strength, you start aligning yourself with powerful organizations, which it did happen. Now, what's funny in 1967, see if I get this right. 1967, Jupiter was in place, and I was working in junior achievement, and I was working for a radio station, selling advertisement and putting on a little rock and roll show. 12 years later, Jupiter returned to the same spot, and it went on another 12 years, and I walked into KDKA radio, and they more or less offered me the ability to do my show. I'm getting it all confused now. One time was when I got my own show. One time was when I kept the KDKA and got a show here. And the next time is when I started Unplugged. All when Jupiter was going through the ninth house. I'm trying to get the dates and expressions exactly right. So when Jupiter returned from my high school 12 years later, I walked into a radio station and I said, I'd like to have my own show, please. And they said, okay, how about Saturday? I waited till Jupiter came back exactly around. It was exact that day in the ninth house of broadcasting, Jupiter educating the public. I said, I'd like to have my own show, please. They said, no problem. Okay, Saturday, you be here so. I showed up on that Saturday in January on the day of an eclipse, and the eclipse was on the top of my chart. In the eclipse on the top of my chart, I was on the air for 2.5 hours. The show lasted 5 minutes, and the eclipse blew the station off the air. The eclipse was in Aquarius on the top of my chart. I was supposed to be on 2.5 hours, my first show. The whole station was not only blown off the air, it stayed off the air for a week. So there you see how an Aquarian eclipse can act up. And so I showed up a week later and we went ahead with it. So when the Jupiter came back, the next time I started working monthly on a show out of KDK in Pittsburgh, and the next time it was starting Unplugged. Okay. Just shows you how nuts charts are. Now, this is a very, very powerful part of my chart. Pluto trine to Mercury. It's 4 degrees away. Let me talk a little bit about this first of all. This is symbolic, and I have noticed people with trines or 120 degrees, 1/3 of the circle. A trine to Mercury is very, very powerful. And usually you'll pick up the real positive part of the Pluto or the really positive parts of Scorpio. This is why I can just be like a detective in a chart and just go, that's not it. That's it. That's it. I can just tell. I don't know why, but I remember when I was little and they said to me, what do you want to be and when you grow up? And I wanted to be a criminologist. Find out the bad guy, get his fingerprints. I didn't know why. That's what was on my mind at the time. So I have learned with conjunctions, with squares, I don't care what you say, you're going to get the good and you're going to get the bad. You're just going to. But I have found with trines, almost all the time, trines are really, really good. They're really, really powerful. I've even seen sextiles to a smaller degree because I use a smaller orb. That's a 60-degree aspect. But that Pluto trine Mercury is, to me, the part of me that's able to just go, nah, it's not it. That's it. And I could not do that in my first 20 years, Claudia. I could not do that in my first 20 years of doing astrology. All of a sudden, one day, after 20 years, one leg to stand on, after 20 years, I just started to know How did I know? I don't know. I just know. And one of the biggest days that you'll find a leap forward in your astrological ability is the day you stop worrying about it. And I'm not talking about being careless. You just get to the point where, what was it? What was it happen? I started getting these intuitive hits. And me being the Capricorn, I say, oh no, here you are, the medium up in Cleveland. You know all about this stuff. You're great at this stuff. And I started getting these intuitive hits on people. And I'd start to express it. And my Capricorn would say, no, you can't say that because you don't know that. I go, okay, I can't say that. No, you can't say that because you don't know that. And one day I said, hell with it, I'm going to say it because I do know it. It just forced its way through. It forced its way through. Truth forced its way out. And take a look. This Jupiter, Eris, is right on the cusp of the third house. The third house is the mind. Okay, I don't know what was hitting it, but something must have been in this area because Jupiter, Eris, and Aries is about, I got something to say and I'm just going to say it. It's not wildness. Yeah, doing astrology is a lot, how do I put it? There's a lot involved in terms of how honest are you going to be with yourself. And if you're going to BS yourself, you're going to be a crappy astrologer. That's why I was talking to Erica earlier about being careful reading for people. Read for people if you want, but you got to be very careful that you couch it in the right terms. And you got to be real careful that you don't tell them what they want to hear and you don't tell them what makes you sound good. You can't do it. Susan's shaking her head because she's a master psychic medium. She understands. People come to you and they want you to tell them that he's a bastard and you should leave him. 95% of mediumship is he's a bastard, you ought to leave him. And you just can't do it. I've been in these psychic fairs and stuff when I was building my clientele. I've heard psychics, I've overheard them saying one to the other, just tell them anything, they'll listen to it. Tell them anything, you'll get the money. I've heard that. It makes you feel terrible. And that's not true for most of them are very good-hearted and have good intentions. So, we're going around the block on this one. Fun one tonight. So Saturn comes around. Saturn returns age 28, almost exactly. The Saturn returns almost exact. My Aquarian girlfriend gets up and leaves town. Bye. Didn't even say bye, just left. My Aquarian girlfriend at the time gets up and leaves because I'm not going anywhere with my life and I better go get it together. She was right. And I wasn't going anywhere with my filmmaking. I had done 10 years of documentary filmmaking, wasn't going anywhere with it, and I had to go back to school. So I went back to school, Saturn in the 9th house. I went back to school at nighttime and learned a new trade, which was computing in 1980 and started moving forward from there. So a Saturn returns are usually pretty darn good. They might set you back a little bit, but sometimes getting set back is helpful to you. My dad was a Capricorn. My only wife at the time, Capricorn. So I'm very versed with the energies of Capricorn. Okay. The Venus in Scorpio, I don't know much about this. Venus is in its fall. It's in its fall in Scorpio. I kind of like it there. It kind of makes me, with movies and with music, I love it or hate it. It's black and white. There's no gray. The Mercury and Sag, thank God I got Mercury and Sag with all this other Capricorn stuff. And that's kind of the fun part of me when I talk about theories, etc. And it's the opposite of Dear Miss Liza. When I was writing the book, I just blabbed it out on paper, and she went over it like the iron claw, and I just blabbed it out, and it was a perfect mixture. And then she said, "Give the whole book to me." I said, "How?" She said, "Put it on paper." Okay, so I printed out this huge manuscript of, well, it was basically in order of how the book is now. But then she went to the scissors, and she went to the Scotch tape, and I'm walking by the kitchen like this, and what are you doing to my manuscript? And I'm dying. What are you doing? And then she hands it to me, and it's all in order. She's over there holding her forehead right now. And she gives me all these extra pieces. What are the extra pieces? She said, I couldn't find anywhere to put them. I said, that's because you took them out of the book. And then we started working on integrating it together, and it really started to work. But the point is, it really worked out well because she was the Saturn, and I was the Uranian Jupiter. And we worked our way through it, and it worked out to be a pretty smooth transition once we got past the point and all wanted to kill each other. She's over there going like this. Okay. I have found the Chiron, a lot of people my age, let me explain this to you. Chiron is in Capricorn. I have found this to be very true. And remember, from our book, we have stated that Chiron is the ruler of Virgos. So it's a very Virgo and uptight, perfectionist kind of energy. Now, the thing about Chiron, it doesn't go in a little circle. It goes around and comes back, and it's real tight, goes back. So because of this huge elliptical orbit that's irregular, Chiron is in some signs for like 2 years, other signs like 13 years. Okay? The only thing that's constant about it is it returns around age 51. Well, age 51, everything fell to hell for me. Everything, job, marriage, everything changed, had nothing, moved to Pittsburgh with nothing. 2003. That was the Chiron return. The thing I've noticed about the Chiron in Capricorn, and I was going to talk about Chiron placements tonight if I ran out of things to say, but I don't think that'll happen. If you've got Chiron in Capricorn, and a lot of people that are about mid to late 60s have it, you are obsessed with the house it's in, period. You are obsessed with the house that it's in. I've seen people with Chiron in the fourth, and they're just obsessed with their family. Is everybody doing okay? I've seen it up in the 10th house, and they're obsessed with their career. You can't talk to them about anything else. They're just obsessed with where Chiron is. I've seen people with Chiron in the first house in Capricorn, and they're obsessed with themselves, period. So when Chiron returns, remember, it's the planet that rules your wounded healership. So it's symbolic of, I've not had a position that I've been noticed for. I've never been noticed for the position that I have. That's what it's about in Capricorn. When Chiron returned, all of a sudden I lost my position and started over in a new pot. I got repotted, and I got finally in the right pot, which was the astrology part in 2003. So I have noticed with Chiron and Capricorn in the 12th house, you know me, no matter what I talk about, it always comes back to perceiving it through God's eyes. That's just what I do. Everything I talk about eventually comes back through seeing it through your spiritual vision. It's not a Capricorn trait. That's a 12th house trait. And there's Chiron in the 12th, and this is the reason why. And Chiron is strong because it's next to the sun, and it squares Jupiter, and it squares Eris. So when you hear me say it's strong because it squares, it's not so important what the aspect is. What's important is these planets combine their energies. Chiron squaring Eris, Chiron squaring Jupiter. The planets are interchanging their energies. Now, what is the negative side of Jupiter? Excessive. What's the negative side of Chiron? Perfectionistic, obsession. So what's important when two planets combine? That's why I barked at you to buy Arroyo's book on a planet, it's like a catalog of the planetary energies, the planetary handbook, astrology handbook. And it's just excellent because it tells you what happens when you combine one energy with another energy. So when I talk to you, if I talk to you about Sun Jupiter, you've got to have an instant understanding of what does Sun Jupiter mean? What does it basically want? What does it do when it's out of hand? What does it do when it's weak? And if you can't do that, you can't read a chart. You don't have to be perfect at it, but that's where you're at as beginners or intermediate readers. You need to know what happens when Mars and Uranus combine. What do they mean? What does Mars want to do? Mars wants to do this. What does Uranus tell it to do? How does Uranus impact it? So that's the constant lesson that you're learning. Now, I'll say this. You will be led astray if you listen to a lot of astrologers because they get you off on learning about this kind of ray, and this kind of ray, and this kind of planet over here, or this asteroid here, or this one. And they've all got their value, but if you can't do the basic stuff, what are you worrying about? If you can't take Pluto opposite the moon and tell me basically what it means, hey, Pluto's coming into opposition to my moon now. What does it mean? What do I look for? What's it going to feel like? How can I tell? If you can't do those things, you're wasting your time with other stuff. You got to get down. It's kind of like knowing what a hammer does, knowing what the pliers do. You got to know the basic energies. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open this up for questions. And I will be glad to go back in time and tell you what happened when certain things happened. And that is how you learn. To repeat one more time. Since Uranus is 7 years per house or 7 years per sign, at age 42, Uranus is opposite Uranus. I just had Uranus square. Uranus has just gone 3/4 the way around at age 63. I just had that. So you got to find out, write these transits down on a piece of paper and write down next to it what happened or what happened in your family, etc., etc. This is how you learn. And then the whole chart starts exploding in front of your eyes. You start to see how all this happened. Okay. Now let's take any questions that you might have about the chart.
I have a question.
Yes, Claudia.
Well, I have two. Number one, how did you experience your second Saturn return?
The second Saturn return at age 58, the thing that most people do experience is a relaxing of responsibility. I paid my dues. I don't have to do this anymore. So for me, that would have been age 58 on top of 52, 2010. Liza and I had just gotten together and started to write a book. And I was in my office working hard. Sometimes we were doing 8 readings a day. And I said to her, look, I have second Saturn return, just came out of open heart surgery.
Mm.
And I said, I can't do this stress anymore. I can't do it. And it's a retirement transit. I was retiring from the daily grind. And I said, I got all this knowledge, I better put it in the book. So that's how that started. And the book was completed in 2011. So for me, it was overworking.
Yeah.
Second Saturn return. You knew it would be hard in my chart with all the Saturn presence there. Divorced from a Capricorn woman.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then the other one, and to the extent that you're comfortable talking about it, how has Pluto been for Pluto and Capricorn been for the last, I don't know, 14, I don't know how many years it's been.
Well, sometimes I'm just an absolute idiot about some things astrologically. And Liza said to me, as Pluto was entering my 12th house, and I had just met her, and she's over there fiddling her thumbs right now. Pluto entered the 12th house, and I told her, oh, sweetie, don't worry about Pluto in my 12th house. It doesn't do anything in the 12th house. And she looked at me like I was, speaking Greek. And she was exactly right, as it destroyed my life.
Mm-hmm.
Pluto in the 12th house, Pluto going through the 12th became karmic. Are you going to deal with your karma? So I had to start facing collective issues. I had to start facing issues that I had done this and that and not done it right, not done it perfectly. But the main thing was I had to start taking more and more responsibility for myself. When was that? What was that when you had the move? Which move, Ray?
To Pittsburgh?
No, the Pittsburgh move was 2003. That was the Chiron return. That was the Chiron return at 51. 7 years later was the second Saturn return. And you knew it would be big in my life. And at the time I was teaching at the community college, I was teaching astrology at a lot of colleges around here. So you keep seeing that theme here. But as far as Saturn goes, if you're not getting together and taking personal responsibility for yourself, you will be stopped and forced to. And that's what happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
And when it actually stopped my heart, and it's 17 people in the operating room, and they told me they give you a shot and they hope that it starts up again. That's a rather sobering time.
Oh my gosh.
But that, to me, what it was, frankly, it was a turning point to me. Are you going to open your heart or not?
Wow.
That's what it was. Are you going to open your heart or keep it closed?
That's big.
In my own mind. That's what it was. Yeah, it's big. It's huge. And the astrologer in 1971 was partially right. Come on, Linda. I can see you got a question stirring in your head there. I can just see it when it stirs there. Let's see.
Rick, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
When you said open your heart, does that mean forgiveness?
Of course it does. Yes.
Oh, that's all I want to know. Sorry.
It means forgiveness, loving. Mostly it means being compassionate. What I learned now is mostly being compassionate to yourself. That's what I'm learning. Anyhow, that's what it was. And I had to just start incorporating all that. Come on, Linda. I ask you to unmute yourself.
I don't really have a question, but when you were talking about reading charts and you said that everybody wants you to say, leave that guy.
You leave the bastard.
Leave-
He is beating you and you need to leave him.
or go with the good guy. I mean, there's always that thing. And all I can remember once I called you for a reading and I desperately wanted you to say, leave the bastard. And you just refused to do it. I can remember and it changed my life. Because when we were done talking, I spent maybe 3 or 4 days after that trying to think of why wouldn't he tell me what I ought to do, and why doesn't he see that? And then I realized that I was just looking at all the wrong things. I mean,
Well, a couple of things. This is very important what you're talking about. You were mature enough to see it, and most Libras aren't.
well, it was. I mean,
Let me continue here. Most Libras are not mature enough to really look at their karma. Most of them are looking at how's it going to make me look? Where am I going to end up on the social ladder? But I knew with your Pluto rising that you were used to belly button staring, that you were used to hard stuff. And this is one of the reasons you'll notice in my chart. My chart is stern. It's stern. And because it's stern, that's where I tell people, no, I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you what's really going on. And what have Liza and I noticed in the past 20 years? What we've noticed is when you dump your junk, you will go far. It's just that simple.
well, and it's also there's our junk, but there's also the cultural junk.
Of course, cultural junk also, yes.
That keeps us thinking. I mean,
Junk simply means you're going to keep following the lies.
well, right, exactly.
Like Trump fans. There's
And-
emotional junk for you.
I mean, I've been doing therapy for like 30 years. Okay. And I love therapy and I think it's very helpful. I think it's more helpful in sort of day-to-day interactions with people where I may not be as strategic or smart as I could be, but
You're already brilliant as you are, period.
but I think part of my brilliance is that I have a team of people that I talk to about these things.
We're not going to go there. You're just brilliant, period.
But what astrology, I mean, this chart reading that you did today, what astrology does, from what I've understood, especially if you go back to it over time, like, a couple times a year, you get your chart read. You sit down and you just don't do it on Unplugged. You go in and you have the thing and you tape it and I take notes and we talk about it, because what that does is that helps us understand, like the Pluto return, or like, Mars is sitting on my Uranus right now, and it's like I am like restless. I am like,
me too. It's on mine exactly. Right?
oh my God, it's driving me crazy. It's driving me crazy.
Well, I can't. Go ahead.
But how nice to know that. It's not gonna last forever, but how can I use that to jumpstart?
We're all operating, we're all going down the highway with this fabulous map underneath our seat, and we're not looking at it.
That's right.
We're just driving and looking for signs and trying to remember where that right turn was, whatever. It's so understandable. And I'm going to do a show some night on why astrology is it's the black sheep of the family. It's got no place to really get itself planted. It's got no place to really verify itself. It's got 75,000 different opinions about one planet, and how does it keep on living and keep up its validity? How does it keep its archetypal coherence together? But it does. And I'm going to tell you over and over because I know when it needs repeated. You need to study your own chart. What happened when this planet came through? And be honest.
I know I open right now.
Yeah, nothing happened. Oh, when it hit this planet, oh, everything happened. And then what you'll start to see different sides of Uranus. Sometimes it's this side of Uranus. Sometimes it's that part of Uranus. Sometimes it's not even happening. You got to wonder why that happened. But that's how you learn. And especially as an astrologer, you got to do other people. You got to do other people. People come to me all the time and I tell them, I don't want to know anything about you. And when I get them, I want to know what the signs were for mom and dad. And I want to know, do you have kids? Have you been married? What sign are you married to? What's your occupation? That's it. And the rest is going to come out. And it's so wonderful to have a class like this because you're all feeding each other. You're all feeding each other information. You're all going to go off on your own tributaries because astrology is so strong it can afford it. It just can. Come on, one leg. Thank you, Linda. Come on, one legger. We got a question from Ray. 1 week, should we each take a turn doing an anonymous chart from one of us? Well, I'm not going to get into that. One leg, what do you have a question on?
I don't have a question, but I was just intrigued by the way you handle things in readings, and I was kind of comparing them to what I do.
What do you do?
Well, so you're the heavy Capricorn Saturn influence,
Right.
and I don't have a whole lot of that.
Right.
But
You're Sag and Gemini.
Sag and Gemini and Aquarius rising. So if somebody comes and wants to know about somebody in their life and should they leave them or, so I tune in only to the first name of the individual and I say he's like this, this, and this, right? I want to make sure we've got the right person.
Right.
And then the reading usually turns into why they do the things they do.
Wait. Who's the they?
The person that they want to get rid of.
Okay, the other person. Okay.
Right. So why are they doing the
why
things?
does the other act the way they do?
How do they function? How do they think? Why do they do the things they do? What's behind this? What's likely to happen if you stay? What's likely to happen if you don't?
I want to know how anybody can answer what the other's motivation really is.
Because I'm tuning into them. This is it becomes a psychic reading at that point.
You and I are two completely different animals.
But I would never tell somebody leave them or stay or I would.
That's what they want you to do. They want to take the responsibility off their shoulders.
Right, but like you, I would never go there.
Yeah, but what's happening now, Susan? Really clearly, people are really changing. They really are getting so much better in the last 5 to 10 years compared to 30 years ago. People are taking much more responsibility for themselves. They really are owning up to it. And that's our only hope. Right. That's our only hope, Right. Well, you do what you do, and it's a marvelous thing, and it's an incredible talent. I went to spiritualist church for every week for 3 years trying to learn mediumship. I got nowhere. Yeah. It's just really hard to do. I tried it. Some people are you're naked, right? You're just naked. You have nothing to work with. Just you and the air and the person. Very, very difficult. Yeah. You have to trust spirit. You do, and the teacher that I had always said, no props. Okay, well, let's move on. Thank you very much. Sure. No props. Any other questions? Very good, Susan. Any other questions? John, anybody? Waldo. Mr. Hayes, anybody got a question?
I got an observation, not a question, but maybe it turned to a question too. Because I was blown away with your degrees and my degrees. are very close to each other. Like your moon in Pisces, 6 degree, my Chiron is 6 degree Pisces. You Sag, you Mercury 17 degree Sag, my moon 17 degree Sag. and Pluto, the you Pluto is in Leo 21 degree, and my Mars is in 20 degree Leo. So I think maybe that's when I saw you the first time in a video in YouTube. I was attracted to your energy. So, and that I got the observation. Plus, also, my Jupiter is also in 5 degrees Pisces, so it's close to your moon. Now, I saw the chart for the harmonic, the harmonic chart, because I noticed every time you give your a talk, you always have a lot of clients that have that issue with the relationship. You always come out the relationship thing, and I noticed you had the Libra in the MC in the harmonic 12.
This is 12th harmonic, and I have Cancer at the top.
And in the no, sorry, the ascendant. Your ascendant in the harmonic was Libra.
Okay,
And
what do you see there?
what I see is that you have that life, that you work so much with the relationship in that life because that was your destiny. The ascendant is the destiny, the mission. Huh? So now people come to you because you had that experience. I mean, you even like paying the karma, like you say, you're paying the Saturn in the midheaven and with the in Libra, you know. So it's always like a relationship issue anyway for you. Even if you are a counselor, it's still related to that. And I have my ascendant in Libra, so I say like, this is like, you know, like,
well,
it's gonna be a better teacher than somebody that already went through ascendant in the other past life, you know.
Yes, thank you, Waldo. So where I'm at right now is this. I've been through enough stuff in my own chart. I don't really need to talk about it very much. I think my chart is interesting in the terms of the cross, the strong Uranus, the strong Saturn, etc. But where I'm coming to now with astrology, and people are always looking to me because they see the U.S. and the world's in dire shape. We saw this coming 15 years ago. Not to be told you so, but we did see it coming. We didn't know exactly how. But now what I see is this, and I think John Hayes and I talk about this before shows. I'm not concerned about stuff anymore. It's a matter now of the collective. We all know what the hell's going on. We all lived through the nightmare that was Mr. Trump. It could be again. We all lived through the nightmare of what, 76 million people voted for him? 76 million. Okay, we went through the nightmare. The whole point now is this: are we going to get it together or not? And we're all talking, we're all expressing, we all have our friends, we're all referring them to stuff, we're all exchanging books, we're all watching movies. Are we going to love or not? Are we going to love each other or not? Now, I really don't have much more to say. I'd be glad to help people astrologically. I'm glad to remind you of Jesus 101, which we're still trying to learn. And it's really that simple. Jesus 101. And it's one of the great things about this group. This group loves each other. And I'm very proud to be a part of it. Just real proud to be a part of it. And I'm going to cut it off right there for the evening, unless there's any other questions. Susan does have one, yes.
I was just wondering, did you ever take your core group and layer it over your chart to see if maybe there's a whole lot more connection amongst the bunch of us?
Yeah,
with you?
I have done things like that in the past, and solar fire starts to break down after 10. It won't allow you to do more than 10 people. But I have done things like that. And what's more important is the date and the moment that the group started. And
Okay.
this group has a very strong Virgo quality to it. It means it gets down and it works hard at it. But the main thing is this. We need to, in each of our ways, and every one of you is so talented. You all got so much great talent. And I don't know if this is kind of like going to church for us in a way on Thursdays. I don't know what it is. I don't care what it is. I just know that there's a lot of good force behind us. We have a lot of good intentions. And I'm real glad that we all keep meeting. And it would really break my heart to see it to change.
Yeah.
Because it's a good group, and I thank you all for checking it out. So if you want to,
Cheers to that.
here's to that. Any Thursday, if you want to join us live, just go to Google and type in Astrology Unplugged, and you can join us Thursdays live at 8 o'clock. This will be posted in a few minutes up on YouTube, and we got another one here. Did I parse my 11th house Mercury with my 12th house? No. I will take a look at that. Thanks to everybody. Love y'all. We'll see you next week.
Good
Thank
night,
you, Rick.
everybody. Good night, Rick.
Night.
Night.